was in for a couple of years. I grew up in Los Alamos, started a family here in Albuquerque for the last 4 years. After 2 years working full-time as an investigator of police misconduct in New York City, there as a mayor, there were about 100 investigators working full-time to investigate complaints against the police. Rude comments to uses of force, shootings, and general abuse of authority. That's really how I got into this area in the first place. I'm really excited to think that I could be involved in a different way here. Obviously, I also, in my people who have had interactions with the police, many of them not with the way that turned out. And I also interviewed the police officers who are involved in my current job. As an investigator also, I talked both with the people who make the complaints, whom had really extensive history with the police, whom had never had an interaction with the police before this incident that caused them to make a complaint. I would also talk with the police officers, so it was a really unique position to be able to, from a neutral standpoint, talk to people who were on both sides, understand how difficult it was to deal with really challenging situations out on the street. And I hope that experience as an investigator and also as a public defender is going to make it easier for me to understand what both sides are for here. Thank you.
I'm currently work one floor above Hans, across the street at the Defender Department in the Felony Division. I've been there for a year. Before that, I spent about 11 years as primarily in the criminal defense, both in state court and federal court. Then I spent 6 years doing civil prosecution of child abuse and neglect cases for CYFD. So I've seen both sides, prosecution and defense, where the police were witnesses and the police were opposing witnesses. And talked to a lot of witnesses. One of the main things I have learned from working both sides, and I would have learned it from either side, is that people tend to get things wrong, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, so one has to be careful. In the years before, I graduated law school in 95, I went late. In the few years immediately before law school, I traveled in Central America, did human rights work in Guatemala, protecting people from death squads. I visited El Salvador during the Civil War. I worked at Habitat for Humanity in Burundi when it was ruled by a truly brutal military dictatorship, worse than I can imagine. And spent a year and a half working in Uganda shortly after Idi Amin had been deposed and been replaced by somebody who was less flamboyant, so less famous, but actually worse. So I was living in a society that was barely coming out of the aftermath of the dictatorship. What it's done for me is given me an enhanced commitment to process. That human beings will never develop any system that's guaranteed to get the right result all the time. And the best we can hope for is to come up with a fair process, because I lived in places and worked in places where there was no process. So my commitment is to try to come up with the best process that we can. And I should mention that for 5 years, from 2001 to 2006, I'm the board of directors of the state of the city. Thank you.
Hi, Nancy Koenigsberg. I don't have quite an interesting background as my colleague here does. I'm the Director of Disability Rights New Mexico. We're the state's protection and advocacy system, and as the name I think explains, we are advocates on behalf of people with disabilities. I was hired at the RNM in 1988 and have focused my work primarily on behalf of people with mental illness, though that's been my focus, though our agency basically works on behalf of anybody with a disability. And clearly people with mental illness or a combination thereof, may behave in ways that are different, will increase the likelihood of them becoming involved with the police at some point or another. And so I've been interested in this topic, and I think would bring I'm here, I think, because I bring a unique perspective. There's a phrase in the disability advocacy movement called "nothing about us without us," and I see that as my primary function here, is to make sure that we hear the voices one way or the other of people with disabilities who, because they don't necessarily come to forums like this, and to make sure that their voices are included, so that any process, the kind of process that we do create, is inclusive and understands who it is in the community that we are concerned about. We are concerned about everybody, and in particular, especially given the reason for the Police Oversight Committee, the perspective of people with disabilities. I've been involved in lots of policy advocacy on related to disability issues in the legislature, and actually in city government. I've been involved in a couple of task forces since 2004. I think was the first one I did, when there was an oversight committee trying to develop early intervention services and crisis intervention services with the police, and recently the Mayor's Task Force in 2011, and one with the Baseline Center for Mental Health Law and the county in 2012. And like I said, my primary goal is to keep the perspective of people with disabilities in front of this committee as we develop the process.
Thank you. My name is Andrew Lippman, and I'll say right up front, I would like the opportunity to chair this task force because I'm dedicated to making Albuquerque a better community, and I have a track record in doing so. I earned a master's degree from New York University in social work with concentrated study in community organization and administration. Among other things, I was the founding treasurer of the New Mexico Holocaust and Intolerance Museum, which is downtown here on Central, and I was the executive director of the Jewish Federation, which developed the $10 million Jewish Community Project in the Northeast Heights on Wyoming between Spain and the Canada. I'm retired now, so I have an abundance of time to this task force, and that's very important. I think we have a lot of work to do. I also have prior experience serving as both a board president and a task force chair. Most recently, I chaired the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Task Force Coalition for Public Safety. I'm a former president of the New Mexico Holocaust and Intolerance Museum Board, and a founding member and former state chair of the New Mexico Human Rights Coalition Board. In addition, I'm the founding president of the New Mexico Association of Management Consultants. I believe I'm well qualified to chair this committee from the positions that I've had in the past, chairing various task forces and boards. And most importantly, I want to do it, and I care about our community. I'll stop with that.
Good afternoon. I'm Arianes, and I'm the State Director for New Mexico LULAC. I'm also the Chairman of the Hispano Roundtable of New Mexico. I'm also on the National LULAC Board of Directors. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, New Mexico, La Plaza Vieja town. My family's been in New Mexico for over 400 years. My family goes back many years, fought in the Civil War in Glorieta Pass and all these things. Went out to New Mexico High University, got my MBA in Accounting and Finance, and I got my MBA in Accounting Finance and Economics, and BA in Accounting and Finance. I've been an activist for most of my life, as well as I work at Curtin Air Force Base. But I was one of the early critics of the Police Oversight Commission and the process, because I saw so much injustice going on. I think one of the first changes that we have to make is to ensure that we have an unbiased commission. My early experience with the commission was that they were all political appointees. When you reviewed their resumes, it was chock filled with political appointments, and so what we need is a group that's going to be unbiased. But I bring this to the table. I was one of the leaders, probably one of the first people to speak out about police brutality and calling for the police Department of Justice investigation on APD. Was even invited to the White House to meet with President Barack Obama on this subject, and also met with Eric Holder on this subject in our National LULAC convention in Orlando, Florida last year. I was glad to see that it came to fruition, although there was many challenges. And I too am interested in running for the chairman of this committee. I think it's important that we have a voice that strongly represents the community in New Mexico, that strongly represents the minority community. I work well with all the other groups. I think that for the most part, Hispanics, African Americans have been most affected by police brutality, and I think we have a strong voice at the chair of this position, and I plan to run for that position.
Thank you. Mr. Bertoletti.
Thank you. My name is Fabrizio Bertoletti, and it's not Bertolli, it's not Berlusconi, it's Bertoletti. I wish it was Bertolli, and if Fargo could make a mistake on my account, I would be a lot healthier financially. I basically have spent all of my professional life working for local government. Started in 1974 for a county program, moved to the city in 1978, and stayed until my retirement in 2001. I have a long history of many jobs that I've held, many positions within city government. A lot of them involved either being staff to or directing staff of various commissions, advisory boards. Citizen involvement has been kind of a constant throughout my career. I have managed small projects, I've managed large projects, as well as a variety of programs. I was the director of the capital program in the mid-90s. I provided the oversight for the quality of life program. Earlier than that, I was deputy director in planning and deputy director in family and community services. I provided the oversight for downtown redevelopment process in the late 90s. Finally, I was deputy chief administrative officer with the Jim Baca administration. I worked overall for 7 different mayors, 4 of whom I actually reported directly to the mayor's office or chief administrative officer office, and it's been a really wonderful career that I've had, and I've had a lot of opportunities during that time, and I am committed to this community and to perhaps give back some of that. Like I said, I have also been very involved with boards and commissions, so I bring that to the table in terms of relationships. I also served as a member of the Unification Commission in 2004 after I retired. That was the effort failed, unfortunately, from my perspective, of developing a unified government between the city and the county. The voters did not agree, so we don't have that, but it was a very interesting experience for me. And because of my background and because of the fact that all of my career I've had to really serve the public in general, and my only advocacy would be to good government in this effort. I look forward to working with such a group of you're all bringing a lot to the table. It's going to be really exciting to work with all of you. I'm honored to be among you. But I would be interested as well, because of that, my background, to apply whatever for the position of chair or vice chair. Actually, I would prefer vice chair. But if no one, there are other people that want to be the chair, so I would definitely consider their thing. So I will shut up now and get on with the business.
Thank you.
Hi,
Ms. Kennedy.
I'm Dr. Kennedy, and first of all, I want to say I'm honored and humbled to be among some of the people here. It's truly an honor. I'm a clinical psychologist, an academic, kind of a nerd, and a down-to-earth horsewoman, which makes me able to relate to just about everybody. and I found that that's very helpful. I'm a transplant. I'm from Chicago. I've been here about 5 years. I'm currently the statewide behavioral health director for juvenile justice services for CYFD. I'm also an idealist, which makes me just crazy enough to always try to do the right thing and get myself in trouble. But I find I'm in good company when I do that. When I saw this request for this task force, I got excited. I got excited because I was a not so good kid that went into law enforcement at 18. I was in the law enforcement field for about 10 years, and then I went and got my doctorate in clinical psychology, and I joked that I did that so I didn't have to work with cops anymore. Well, then I started treating them and training, and I developed a not-for-profit center to assist police officers who dealt with traumatic stress. And I started training departments. I debriefed 911 debriefers. I trained departments how to develop their own critical stress debriefing team. And I trained special units in law enforcement about mental illness, Alzheimer's, adolescent responses, and things like that. As I've gotten older, instead of getting mad, I ask what I need to teach and how I can help, because we can't expect people to know things if they haven't been taught. And I'm still a little feisty, so sometimes I need to remind myself of that. But again, it's a really big honor for me to be on this committee, and I will do, as I said in my interview, whatever anyone asks of me to do, whatever I can offer. I know law enforcement, I know the language, I know the culture, I know the research, and I have very high standards and great respect.
Mr. Lloyd.
I have till 7. I'll keep mine short. I'm Craig Lloyd. I retired from the Albuquerque Police Department after 21 years. I retired as a police captain. I served on the City Council District 8 for 4 years. My attendance at neighborhood meetings was probably second to Councilor Winters attending meetings. I was at them every night, it seemed like. But I think I have a good feeling of what the community is looking for, what they want, what their concerns are. I've made contact with many of them. I've been off council for several years now, 5, 6 years. And I've maintained contact with several of them. I still get together. In fact, they invited me to the grand opening of the District 8 Community Center. So I still get emails from them, and they still tell me oftentimes what I'm wrong or what I should have done right. I saw this force, and I'm not going to lie to anybody here. APD, I'm very fond of APD. I spent 21 years there with these people. But I also had a reputation of being a very tough captain on my officers, and I did that because I felt if I disciplined for smaller items, that they would never graduate to the bigger issues. I'm not interested in being chair or vice chair. I have nominations for 2 I would like to make. I know everybody is hoping in the community that we, unbiased board, were fair and open. And I think if I was to seek being chair, there'd be people on one side of the fence saying, retired APD, he's not going to be very fair. He's not going to be open. He's going to be biased. It's interesting that the ACLU's on the other end of the table from me, because my concern, and I know many of the community would say the same about them. Not that Peter is not a good person. I've worked with him in the past, but I just feel that we need someone on this group of 11 people here that can be right down the middle, that we can find fair and impartial. Someone that can maybe tell Lloyd, you're wrong. Mr. Simonson, you're wrong. So my nominations for chair would be Dr. Kennedy. Dr. Kennedy is currently working with the State Behavioral Health as a State Behavioral Health Director. She's worked in training officers to respond to the mental ill. And I know that a critical complaint about APD oftentimes we hear is their responses to the mentally ill, that they're not doing it right, they need retraining. So I think she's done both. She's currently the director, and she's also law enforcement how to respond. I think she would be a very good chair for that position. My vice chair nomination would be Francis Armijo. The reason, and I read all these bios very carefully, and it was quick to eliminate some, to be honest, myself. Retired police commander out, out, others as well. But there's some right down the middle of the road. And Francis Armijo has worked as a state representative. She has the ear of the community. She's worked with a lot of people. She knows what they feel, what they want, what their concerns She'd probably still be in contact with them, even though, like myself, she's been gone a long time. She knows what their concerns are, what they want. I think, the state representative, if she was able to get things done there, then she gets done with this board and this commission. So those are my 2 nominations.
Thank you. First members, I think the way we'll work this is we'll deal with one position at a time. We'll open the floor for nominations. You can self-nominate. You don't need a second for a nomination. If you want to self-nominate, feel free. If you want to say to somebody else, you can do that too. That person can politely decline a nomination if they want. Once we've got all the nominations, we'll close the floor, and then we'll have a vote. We're going to ask for a show of hands. I'll run through the nominees one at a time. Show of hands. We've got 10 voting members here, so we'll need 6 to select the chair. And if we get 6 on the first ballot, we'll just keep voting until we get 6. The Robert's Rules of Order do not allow for the nominee receiving the lowest number of votes to be dropped, as in a runoff election. So we'll just keep voting until we get a chair. So with that, I'd like to open for nominations. I believe Mr. Boyd has already nominated Dr.
I'd like to second that.
Okay. Any other nominations?
Well, I already said it, so I'm gonna myself.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I would like to nominate Erickson as chair.
Mr. Erickson, are you okay with that? Yes. Okay.
Nominate myself.
Mr. Arias? Any more nominations? Okay, Crystal is going to, the clerk of the council is going to tabulate the votes, so for a vote, you can kind of hold your hand up long enough for her to write your name. We're going to start with Dr. Kennedy. All those in favor of Dr. Kennedy being the chair of the task force, raise your hands.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
Do the nominees vote for that at that point in time? or
The
not?
nominees can vote for themselves if they're fine. Okay, so that's three. Would you like to, okay, that would be Dr. Kennedy as well. Okay, and the next candidate, Andrew Lippman. All those in favor of Andrew Lippman being the chair of the task force, raise your hands. Okay. Okay, next, Hans Erickson. All those in favor of Mr. Erickson being the chair of the task force, raise your hands. And finally, Mr. Arias. All those in favor of Mr. Arias being the chair of the task force, raise your hand. Okay. We've got a tie between Dr. Kennedy and Mr. Erickson and Mr. Arias who received 1 vote each. Unfortunately, under Robert's rules, we don't get to know the field, so what I'd like to do at this point is just ask the 4 candidates to say a little bit more about themselves and why they're interested, and then we can just continue to vote until the candidate gets the required 6 votes. So, starting with the first, Dr. Kennedy.
I said I would do whatever was required of me. And if the task force feels that I would be appropriate, I will certainly devote the time and effort to that. I really think I am on the fence in a lot of ways. My own family had personal trauma in law enforcement, which is why I did not-for-profit. On the other hand, I had no problem doing fitness for duty evaluations and testifying when there was inappropriate law enforcement action. And so when I talked about joining the task force, I immediately asked to see the training protocols, officer the supervisor of the officers, how long they were with the training officer, what kind of training they had. I wanted the demographics of officers per area, per crime. I wanted to see the ratio of officers who were Hispanic, white, African American, and whether or not it reflected that of the community. So I wanted to see what had been done in the past, what had worked, what didn't work, so that I felt if I had all that information, I could make better recommendations. And so again, I'm willing to serve whatever way the board would like me to.
I think I said a lot of what I wanted to say when we were introducing ourselves. What I want to emphasize is I don't need to take the time. I have the time available to devote to this. Not only because I'm retired, but also because I'm retired, I'm not responsible to an employer for any particular organization. And I don't come out of city government or the police department or any of those places. So I don't know how you did your checklist, Mr. Loy, but I'm very impartial. I'm really only interested in bettering the city of Albuquerque. And as I said before, I have a track record in doing that. I was the founding treasurer of the Holocaust and Tolerance Museum here in Albuquerque and developed the Jewish Community Campus in the Northeast Heights. In addition to that, I have very good experience as both a board president and a task force chair. Two of the things that I chaired were very difficult positions, not too unlike this one. It's very public and represents a wide cross-section of our community. I was the founding president of the New Mexico Human Rights Coalition. That's a coalition of organizations involving most of the human rights organizations in our state. So everybody came to the table with different objectives and different missions, and I had to balance that. I also just come off chairing the Martin Luther King Center's Task Force for Public Safety, which spent 2 years working on this issue. Now, people might say I picked sides with that, but I really haven't. My interest in coming from the Martin Luther King Center was to make our community a better place. We saw a problem, and we got involved in trying to correct that. I say these things because it's very important to have someone in place, as several people have said, is not only going to be impartial, but who has chaired difficult kinds of task forces before, that have different issues and people coming from different perspectives. It takes some experience to do that. I was going to say experience and talent, but it does. It takes both to do that. It's a difficult process. I'll stop there. That's really the reasons why I want to do this.
Thank you. Sure.
I'd actually like to talk a little bit in favor of Andrew. I think that he's somebody whose background is relatively neutral. I appreciate that he's enthusiastic about doing this and has the time to devote to it. I also, like Mr. Loy, would prefer to see someone who doesn't have law enforcement background, is not obviously sort of on one side of the picture. I think that's what Andrew is, and I would vote for him, and I just did a few minutes ago. So I'd urge the person who voted to do that, and actually I'd like to just withdraw my
I was
nomination.
going to ask, would you like to withdraw? All right, Mr. Arias.
Okay, and I'll make one more attempt. I've worked in a diverse group of areas. I worked on education, employment, and civil rights concerns. I'm the founder of New Mexico Enlace, which stands for Engaging Latino Communities for Education, and we've been successful in educating over 130,000 New Mexicans since the year 2000, with an initial grant of $6 million by the Kellogg Foundation. I'm the founder of the Hispanic Education Task Force, and I'm also the, like I said, the chairman of the Hispanic Roundtable, and one of the ones that created the Hispanic Education Act. So my work is very diverse in the areas of education and employment and civil rights. I worked with many mayors as an advisor. I've been an advisor to many councilmen and to many legislators and governors, and even to the President of the United States on this issue. But again, my concern is to all people in the city, but I think that the minority community has been affected tremendously through this whole thing. And I think we need a strong voice for not only the citizens of Albuquerque, all citizens, but for the minority community that has been primarily impacted through this, the police brutality and police problems that we've seen in the city. And I've worked hard to create a balance. Some of the commission in the past, and again, my number one goal would be to appoint a very objective police oversight commission.
Thank you. Okay, with that as background, let's go ahead and take another vote. All those in favor of Dr. Kennedy being the chair, please raise your hands. That's five. All those in favor of Mr. Lippman becoming the chair, please raise your hands. All those in favor of, I'm sorry, Crystal, did you get that? And all those in favor of Mr. Arianes being the chair, raise your hands. Okay. So that was 5 for Dr. Kennedy, 4 for Mr. Lippman, and 1 for Mr. Arianes. At this point, Mr. Arianes,
I'll change our vote to.
okay, let's go ahead and just remove you from
Yeah.
nomination. We'll hold the vote again, okay? All right. Okay, Mr. Arianes has removed himself from nomination. All those in favor of Dr. Kennedy, raise their hands. All those in favor of Mr. Lippman, raise their hands.
You got 5 and 5?
Arm wrestle.
Well,
Arm wrestle.
you know, at this point,
Would you consent to be the vice chair?
Robert's rules,
How's that co-chair?
there's not authority for co-chair, but if you all would like to discuss a chair-vice chair arrangement,
Well, that's
there
what I just
is
asked
no.
her.
Can you-
You know, and for me, it's very important that there be balance on this task force. And I think part of that balance and making improvements is understanding the issues and what hasn't worked and what needs to change to work. And so, at this point, hearing what I've heard thus far, no, I would not be willing to be vice chair.
Okay. Okay, is there any other discussion? Hi, Peter.
See if we have our full left.
Allow me to.
I'm sorry?
Happy to vote if you'll allow me to.
Don't think the rules allow for that. It is Peter available by phone?
Possibly.
That's a
We,
good move.
we don't have formal rules. We could go on voting all night long, and unless anyone changed, it would still be 5 to 5. Mr. Simonson, I know we've discussed what we've talked about, the membership of the task force, if he knows the background. Let's see if we can get him on the phone.
All right.
It's not a problem.
Hi, Peter, it's Steve.
It's wrong.
It's urgent.
I think about it, especially if it's things going on.
direct vote in this case. It wouldn't be a vote by proxy, it would be Mr. Simonson on the phone. And what we would do, at least if we can get a hold of him.
I wasn't able to. I texted him and left him a message. If you want to proceed with other business, we could wrap this back around.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea at this point. We've got a couple options at this point. We can wait until we can get Mr. Simonson on the phone, and then in order to make sure that he's making an informed vote, we would have Dr. Kennedy and Mr. Lippman do the same, 5 minutes about who they are and why they feel they're qualified, why they want to be chair when we get Mr. Simonson on the phone. Or we can postpone the vote of officers until the next meeting. I'm not sure it's the best, most productive use of our time to sit here and keep voting. So, what is your pleasure? Do you want to wait and see if we can get Mr. Simonson on?
I think that's the best.
Yeah, I think
vote.
I don't think it'd be a good idea to postpone it.
Okay.
Especially if we can get Mr. Simonson on the phone.
I think at this point, we should postpone the vice chair as well. I think the one might help to inform the task force on the other. So at this point, with your indulgence, we should probably move to public comment. Public comment here is basically the same format as the city council. We don't have formal rules, but the city council allows for public comment for 2 minutes. There's a bell, we have a timer. There's a bell that will ring once at 30 seconds, and it will ring twice at the end of the public comment. So it's your call. Is that
Here's
an appropriate?
Peter.
You got
Hi,
it?
Peter.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Hey,
Told Peter
let
to
me
vote
put you on speaker. Hold
Or
on.
you just ask.
Can we call you right back on your cell so we can get you on that intercom here? Yeah. Okay. One second. It's 238. 2762.
Hello.
Peter?
Yeah.
Hi, John Zaman here. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Steve was kind enough to get you on the phone. We've got 10 members here, and you're not able to make it for medical reasons, but we're happy to have you on the phone. We're at the point in the meeting now that we're discussing the selection of the chair of the task force.
Mm-hmm.
We have got 2 candidates who have nominated themselves, expressed an interest in being chair. They're Dr. Julia Kennedy and Andrew Lippman.
Okay.
We have had 2 votes and we've deadlocked each time. That's why we've got you on the phone. What I'd like to do, Peter, is I would like to ask Dr. Kennedy and Mr. Lippman to talk about their qualifications and why they want to be the chair for 4 or 5 minutes, just so you'll be informed and have the background. And then we'll go ahead and take a vote with your vote as well.
John, so I'm actually discharging my wife from surgery right now. Is there, so if we can just do it as quickly as possible, that would be great. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be able to vote, pardon me. Yeah, so let's go forward then.
Okay, thank you. We'll try to be protective of your time. Dr. Kennedy?
I'm sorry this is such an inopportune time for you, and I wish your wife well.
Peter, can you hear that?
No, actually I can't.
Peter, it's Juliet Kennedy, and first I want to say I'm sorry this is such an inopportune time for you, and I wish your wife well. Actually, I was nominated for chair, and my goal is to serve, and one of the things that I feel like I bring is a very integral knowledge of law enforcement, coming from that area at one point, and on the other side, also doing fitness for duty evaluations, and testifying in court to those when there has been inappropriate behavior. And so I think I come with a cultural knowledge of law enforcement that I believe is necessary to help this task force get the right data that they need and materials to make good decisions. And I will turn it over now to Mr. Whitman.
Hi, Peter. I'll apologize as well and send good wishes for speedy recovery for your wife. Peter, one of the reasons that I really want to chair this task force is because I come to it from a middle ground position. And I have, as I believe you're familiar, quite a bit of experience in serving as a board president and as a chair of difficult, diverse organizations like the Human Rights Coalition. I know ACLU is a member of that, and the Task Force for Public Safety that I just recently chaired, which was also a coalition of organizations. I don't come to this process from a background of the police department or city government or any government. I really come to it from a citizen's point of view and someone who's been a very active community activist and has a track record in building things for the city of Albuquerque, like the Jewish Community Campus in Northeast Heights and the Holocaust and Intolerance Museum downtown. I'll stop there.
Okay, Peter, Ms. Thompson, were you able to hear all that?
Yeah, no, I can hear all that quite clearly.
Okay, at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the names of two candidates once again. We're going to ask for the folks here who are in the conference room to raise their hands, and then we'll call on you. No pressure. Okay, so all those...
It's an open vote, Peter. Just so you know.
It is an open vote. All those who are in favor of Dr. Kennedy as chair, raise their hands. All those who are in favor of Mr. Lippman as chair, raise your hands.
Aye.
Okay, and with Mr. Simonson's vote, that is 6 votes for Mr. Lippman and 5 votes for Dr. Kennedy. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. I look forward to working with you.
Peter, we're going to move directly
Thank you, Peter.
to the nominations for the vice chair. Do you have a couple of minutes to hang around, or do you have to run?
I think I'm going to have to sign off. I apologize for that, and I really deeply regret that I'm not there with you all. If this hadn't come up at this particular time, I'd be there with you all, and I just really regret that I'm not. But I'm going to have to sign off.
No, you've got your priorities right. I appreciate you spending the time with us over there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for calling. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. Goodbye.
All right, at this point, we'll go to nominations for vice chair. The floor is open. Any nominations?
Second.
Are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate myself for vice chair.
I'll nominate myself.
I'd like to withdraw my name from the nomination, and I'd like to nominate Mr. Erickson.
Okay, are there any other nominations? At this point, we've got Mr. Arianes, Mr. Bertoletti, and Mr. Erickson. I'll just call the names in order. All those in favor of Mr. Arianes as vice chair, raise your hand.
Can I make a statement before you
Of course.
take? Okay. I'm going to kind of take the position as chair, and I'm not going to vote on the vice chair for 2 reasons. First of all, in my experience, chairs don't vote on resolutions and things that come before the body they're chairing. Secondly, it'll give you an odd number,
An odd
so,
number.
yeah. So there's two reasons for my not voting on the vice chair position.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, with that said, all those in favor of Mr. Adianis as vice chair, raise your hands. All those in favor of Mr. Bertolletti as vice chair, raise your hand. All those in favor of Mr. Erickson as vice chair, raise your hand. That's three for Mr. Adianis, two for Mr. Bertolletti, and three for Mr. Erickson. Same process, same procedure, Mr. Adianis. Say just a couple of words about why you want to be vice chair.
Well, I think I've spoke a couple times already, but as a state director for New Mexico LULAC, as the chairman of the Hispanic Roundtable of New Mexico, and as a national board member for LULAC, I think I represent a constituency that needs to be visible in this group, to speak for the minority community. I think when you look at Albuquerque, it's a Hispanic majority city. New Mexico is a Hispanic majority state, and all too often we don't see Hispanics or Native Americans or African Americans represented in these kind of committees. And I think that voice is necessary. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bertolletti?
Yeah, I've spoken about my background, and I think I bring a lot to the table in terms of my experience. As a matter of fact, when I started out talking about myself, I said I would rather be a vice chair than a chair. And the reason for that is because all of my career I have spent being in support roles to various elected officials or committee, commissions, and so on. So I think I could do a very good job in that role, better than actually as a chair.
Mr. Erickson?
I would say again that I've worked very directly both with people, individuals who have complaints against the police, and with the officers who are responding to those complaints as an investigator, and now also with, again, individuals from the community who have really strong feelings about the way they've been treated by the police, and I also have to have the opportunity to speak with those officers. So I think it's a very useful position to have been in, and it's experience that I hope would be useful as a vice chair.
With that said, additional background, let's go to the poll vote again. All those in favor of Mr.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
It occurs to me, although it makes sense for Mr. Lippman to abstain, are we allowed to actually consider his abstention as changing what is required for election? Just concerned about process.
I appreciate that. I think the rule is all those, a majority of those present and voting.
Okay.
Okay. So with that as background, we're looking at 9 members voting and a majority of 5 needed to elect a vice chair. Let's see, where can we go? Where did I
You're about to vote.
We vote.
I was about to vote. Okay, there. All those in favor of Mr. Adianis being vice chair, raise your hands. It's 4. All those in favor of Mr. Bertolletti, raise your hands. All those in favor of Mr. Erickson, raise your hands. That's 4 for Mr. Adianis, 2 for Mr. Bertolletti, and 3 for Mr. Erickson. Are there candidates that would like to withdraw their names, or candidates that want to change their vote?
I will withdraw my name for Mr. Erickson.
Okay,
In
so
support of
you'd
Mr.
want to withdraw your name?
Yeah,
Okay. And your recommendation would be?
Mr. Erickson.
Okay. So we're down to 2 candidates now, Mr. Adianis and Mr. Erickson are going to revote. All those in favor of Mr. Adianis being vice chair, raise your hands. All those in favor of Mr. Erickson being vice chair, raise your hands. Thank you. Go one more time, or leave them up? Okay. Okay. It's 4 for Mr. Adianis, 5 for Mr. Erickson. Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair.
John, you got your balance. Talk about balance.
Yeah.
Split votes.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of discussion is healthy. I mean, folks might look at that as being counterproductive, but it's not. it's healthy and it gets everybody understanding exactly where everyone else is coming from, so that's good. Mr. Chairman, at this point, we'll open for public comment. The rules can be as the chair decides. The city council rules for public comment.
3 minutes?
They're 2 minutes, but you can go to 3 minutes
Okay.
if you'd like.
Well, we spent a lot of time on the election, so I'm gonna try and keep it to 2 minutes. Is there a timekeeper?
There's a timekeeper, a
There's a
bell will ring
timekeeper.
at 1.5 minutes once, and then twice at 2 minutes.
Okay, so those of you who have signed up to speak, there's 6 people. I'm gonna go in the order in which you've signed up, and we'll try and keep it to 2 minutes because we have a lot of stuff to do. We spent a lot of time on the election. So the first person is Mr. Art Tannenbaum.
Hi, my name's Art Tannenbaum. First of all, I believe 2 minutes is just not enough time for anyone to really articulate.
How much time would you like?
No, I'm speaking towards the future.
Okay.
I'm a white guy, in case you haven't noticed. I've lived here in Albuquerque for 20 years in 4 or 5 different parts of the city. I agree with Mr. Arianes that minorities are treated differently. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. I think I'm very fortunate to be a white guy. I've had a couple of instances when I felt law enforcement's interaction with me was inappropriate, and I suspect that if I weren't white and if I weren't fairly well educated and aware of my rights, things would have turned out an awful lot different. But anyway, I want to thank all the members of the task force for contributing your time. It is a very important issue, and I want to reiterate that a good relationship between law enforcement and the community is vital, and the benefits work both ways. Also, several people mentioned training, which I think is very, very important. You can work from the top down, work from the bottom up. I think training is very important, and of course, we all hope that the Police Oversight Commission will be fair, independent, and unbiased. It's very sad, all that the city's gone through and all that the police department's gone through. And I've become acquainted with a few police officers and a lot of firefighters and paramedics. It takes a very special type of person to work in public safety. But on the other hand, we don't want abuse of authority due to lack of oversight or poor policy.
Thank you, Mr. Tannenbaum.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Silvio D'Angelo, Delangelo.
Yes, well, before I speak, I asked for 5 minutes. I provided your package knowing that this 2-minute business really does not, the public an opportunity to talk to you. I was denied 5 minutes. I was denied the opportunity to read my suggested changes to the council that included 20 different pages.
Louder.
Let me start by saying.
I'll give you 4 minutes if you stay on track.
Okay, I give you.
Double your
I gave you a written summary of my talk today. But before I do that, I want to explain, I've been active. I've been a career Air Force officer, I retired as Lieutenant Colonel, I have an MBA, been a 10-year neighborhood president. I served as District 8 representative to the Albuquerque Citizens Dean who overlooked flood funds. Myself and 2 others didn't sit on our hands and did an investigative report that exposed corruption in the housing rehabilitation program. For that, I was honored by Council Greg Payne, and subsequent when Craig Lloyd took over, he fired me for that. Thank you very much, Craig. I was threatened. I had 2 neighbors killed, one almost killed, one Navy SEAL almost killed. In my neighborhood, I got involved. I was threatened by Chief Schultz, as everybody, a lot of people were, to be careful, and probably threatened Mary Hahn as well. I summarized in it, and I hope Laura Mason, who did essentially a secret selection of you folks, and hopefully you folks will go right. But I knew I wouldn't be selected because I was involved. I knew a lot of the people here wouldn't be selected. We were involved. They wanted folks that weren't involved, and they've been great people who weren't involved. I've been to POC meetings. I've had people, friends killed. I certainly get, I hate having officers compare themselves to combat veterans. I served a year there. I wear a Bronze Star. And when I hear them saying, well, they put their lives in danger every day, they don't. They don't. Some do. Very few do. And I resent it. I've lived in 6 states in the United States. I've seen good police forces, good leadership, and I've seen lousy ones. And this is a lousy one. And it starts at the top. There are a lot of great cops in APD. A lot of great cops. Leaders like this and the senior leadership here need to go. And it starts at the top at Mayor Berry's office. If we had a man that cared about the people, the Hispanics, the blacks, anybody, none of this would happen. But there's no accountability, there's no transparency. None of you, I would have hoped that you would have gone to the last POC meeting this last month where they exonerated another cop, Mario Perez, who gunned down a guy in St. Pius, didn't make a video of it. I have a record of all the videotapes, what they issued. They never make recordings. And Miss Hammer over here, who sits with the chief at council meetings, she doesn't care. You know, they might get a slap on the wrist for not making a recording, a reprimand. But if they brutalize somebody, kill somebody, they walk. They walk. You know, that's no different than an obstruction of justice. And these cops know by Schultz's policy, you are allowed to lie, and you're allowed not to make recordings. And you will get free. And DA Brandenburg does that. I mean, they honored, at the council meeting, I was there last week. One more 30 seconds. The council meeting, they did a little dog and pony show where they brought up 5 officers to honor them for damage control because they were getting a lot of heat over the Mary Hahn thing and some other things. And he honored them, and one of them was Leah Kelly. She gunned down and tried to kill a guy downtown that was cutting himself with a round tip butter knife. And she was exonerated, and yet at the POC meeting, they exonerated thing. You can read this.
Mr. Delangelo.
You can read this. I've done your homework for you. I've done 20 pages of changes to that ordinance. Look at it as a starting point, as a straw man. Look at the mindset in that letter from the APD union officer.
Thank you.
And I should have been on it as some of these other people, and God bless you guys. But there's really little credibility when you don't have the activists on this board.
Thank you. Mr. Harold Babb.